Nationals of Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent, you now have the opportunity to partake in free movement from October the 1st, 2025. Yes, you will be able to move, live, have a job, do all the things that you would normally do in your countries across these four nations. And yes, you will be able to do this without the normal hassles of visa and all the other things that come along with moving to someplace else. And yes, this is such a great opportunity for regional integration and unity. However, recently, a few days ago actually, the Honorable Minister in Barbados for Home Affairs and Information did say something to the tune of, if you know you got all the degrees and the certifications and everything and you can't get a job, move to someplace else. Move to another Caribbean island. That's all well and good. That's something we all should have been doing across the Caribbean from ever since. However, there are a lot of people who were complaining and who were rightfully raising concerns. And I think, especially as a chronic illness, hidden disabilities, and mental health advocate, we should be listening to people. We should consider their thoughts, because the real everyday people are rightfully concerned. I am Zana Monique, and I am the creator of Bajans.net. This is Let Me Call Out We Baj Story, and today we can talk about free movement. Let me get to it. All the thoughts, all the things I've said, all the research and all of that is mine. I would try to cite where I can. Please inform yourself and research for yourself if you need to know more information, and comment when you can, of course, but please be respectful. As per CARICOM.org, free movement of these four nations will start from October 1st, 2025. And of course, this is something that always would have happened, but with restrictions. And I will get into those in a minute, but all of those restrictions will be dropped and we will start free movement from October 1st, 2025. On CARICOM.org, it says that the nationals will also be able to access emergency and primary health care and primary and secondary school education within means of the receiving member state. The decision was taken by the heads of CARICOM at the 49th regular meeting of the Conference of CARICOM Heads of Government this year from the 6th to the 8th of July in Montego Bay. Also, according to CARICOM.org, this free movement arrangement falls within the new enhanced cooperation chapter of the revised Treaty of Chagaramas. And under that chapter, the Conference of CARICOM Heads can allow groups of at least 3 member states to seek an advanced integration amongst themselves, where the conference agrees that the targeted objectives cannot be attained within a reasonable period by the community as a whole. So obviously what has happened here, this decision expands on what was offered in that treaty under the CARICOM single market economy. Moving over to the government of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines website, .gov.vc, we take a look at what the Prime Minister had to say there. He said that before, people who worked in places like Barbados without a work permit were literally breaking the law. But after the 1st of October, 2025, this will change. He added that there were other countries which wanted to implement free movement but have some reservations on some issues. What are those reservations? Let's see. Some countries have taken advantage of what we call the enhanced regime of cooperation. Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They are reinstituting complete freedom of movement between our countries by October the 1st. And this is what Dr. Gonzalez had said. As you know, the movement, the OECS countries have completed freedom of movement, but in CARICOM, what we had was 6 months, and providing you were not a security risk. This is when it comes to staying in another country. You have enough money when you come to stay for the time of the immigration officer gives you. But unless you had that CARICOM Skills National Certificate, you had to get a work permit. And that was for specific categories of service. But of course, over the years, the categories had to be expanded. What he had also added is that what this means for now is that our Garifuna brothers and sisters in Belize who want to come and spend more time here don't only have to come just for the 6 months. And I just want to put in there just a little tidbit. I got part Garifuna as well because half of my blood is Vinci. They can come and work if they want, and Vincies can go down to Belize if they want. We have to learn in the same way that we have freedom of movement between persons in the OECS, Grenada and Dominica, and St. Lucia and Antiguans, and so on and so forth. The thing is, however, that hit me in this, amongst other things, is that people were working illegally between the nations and staying and stuff like that. But all of that will be scrapped as of October the 1st. Let me know in the comment section what you think, because it feels funny. I don't know. There are some pros and possibilities to this, just like what the Honorable Minister of the House had said. If you cannot get the job that you want in Barbados, you have the opportunity now. You have options. You can go to these other island states and get the job. That, by extension, leads to a bit of mobility. If one country has a lack of nurses, for instance, they can reach out to those other nations, and you can have a bigger pool of nurses to choose from. If you're looking for teachers in St. Vincent and we have more teachers in Barbados, Dominica and Belize, you can things of that nature. This kind of gives you a bit of a holler back to the Federation days. I can tap on that in a minute. By allowing this free movement between the 4 island nations, labor can find markets, industries might relocate or collaborate or even expand. And then you have regional specialization that can actually become possible. That would actually be great. Certain industries that are created even that are special or a specialist thing only found in those nations or in the Caribbean as a whole. That would be actually fantastic. By extension, you have a cross-pollination of ideas and skills and collaboration when it comes to really big things, like say all the stuff going on in the waters of the Caribbean right now. You can have more significant impact, I believe. Mentally, ideas can come together. It's easier for people to jump, like not just people who are government heads, but others as well. But hey, of course, with pros, there can come cons. Some of the issues that I have found in comment sections of posts talking about this is that not everybody could afford to just pick up and move. Most people are not higher ups or not well-to-do. They're your everyday person that will love an opportunity to lift their family up. But then they can't because they can't afford to just pick up and move. Some of them can't even afford to continue the education that they keep talking about and all. I mean, we, especially in Barbados, we tend to harp on that a lot. We are so much about what certificates people have gotten or what degrees people have gotten. Mind you, that is important. That's important. I have no problem with that. But not everyone has access to these things. Not everyone has the wherewithal, not only physically, but mentally. Some people may be neurodivergent, all the things that would not have been able to complete something like that. But it does not mean that they're not super intelligent and they're not capable of moving forward. And sometimes I feel as if we're a bit close-minded. So it's all of these people that are all in that pool that may not be able to get to do this movement. We need to consider these groups of individuals as well. I don't know what you think, but yeah, I wonder about that. And of course, if it is asked that those who have gotten all the certification and gotten all the degrees and things, and they can't find a job in their niche, if you asking them to just pick up and go to another nation, even if it is in this free movement situation, you can have a brain drain. You can have people that are then not there, are not interested in lifting up Barbados or making it better, improving things, contributing and things like that, because it's happening right now. This is something that is actually on people's lips as we make this video right now, as we talk about free movement, as we do all the things. People are not interested in staying around and bigging up anything because they're not feeling as if they're getting enough back. So that, if you encourage that even more, you got more brain drain. I don't know. I feel as if we went about this. This is a good idea as a whole. We need to come together as a Caribbean in order to do certain things, like fight against all the things that are going on in the world and all of that, for ourselves, to protect ourselves and depend on ourselves for agriculture and things of that nature. But there's still some things that need to be addressed to make people feel better. I don't know. Then you have the service strain. Now, this is what I was going to come to earlier when I was talking about primary and secondary education and the health and all that sort of thing. Are we truly ready for a great influx of people from other places coming to take part freely in our schools or infrastructure or health circumstances, all the things, when sometimes we can't even get our act together? There are roads that are falling to pieces constantly, and I've been around for decades, and it has not really changed. It has. Every year religiously, there's something wrong when schools open for another school year. You know, things like that. There's always something going on in the medical sector. Are we truly ready then for others to come in to partake? Are we strong enough to deal with that when people seriously need help out there for the education, health, legal, whatever? Are we truly ready? I don't know, right? But I'm thinking that all of this needs to be carefully planned and that the general public needs to be in on it, you know, even more so than just being told something. But then again, that's just me. That's just my perspective. And I think the powers that be need to be aware that people are going to have their perspectives. And it should be okay to have a perspective. You know, we need to talk about these things. You have things like cultural and language barriers and friction. You know as well as I do that when it comes to the Caribbean as a whole, yes, we the Caribbean, we as we and all that sort of thing. But as nations, we are very proud of our islands, right? We are proud of who we are. So if you find that people coming in or we going out, people gonna start feeling a way, and they're gonna start feeling like who you think you is. You come in with all your things. You can't come with your but we better than you, and all of that can happen because all of that happens in any case without all of this happening. You know this. Be true. Be true to yourself. People differ. Countries differ. Languages differ. I mean, language is one thing. That's fine, but our ways of being, our cultural nuances, all of those things differ. And we sometimes get a little like peeved, for lack of a better term, when people come and say something that we don't like or we are not willing to deal with because we think we know better in we island and all that sort of thing. You know this. And tacked onto that is backlash then and resentment when you're going to say things like people come and take your job, or the crime rate gone up because most of these people come in here now. And you know this. You know that is something that can happen. And from things in the past, like Federation and all the other things, times that people had to come over or we went, there have always been complaints. There have always been picking and to and froing about who do what and you shouldn't be here. We need to be on place. And this is something that's going on right now. Check comment sections of news articles and things like that. Be informed, be involved in what's happening in your country, and you will know that this is a thing. So then, are we prepared for this? Do we have generally everybody the right mindset yet? Can we deal with this? Are we able to sustain this? And then you have the laws and implementations and things. You know already that the Caribbean tend to be really slow with implementing things and following through with certain things. Are we ready to quickly change, or things put into place so that everything follows through as it should? Are there legal loopholes that need to be looked at? How about administrative systems, migration offices, interagency coordination? All of that down pat. And then leading on from that, what about the security? And remember, I touched on how people just tend to complain about who come in here, and then people, the crime, and etc., etc. How about people who really have not a great, do not have everyone's best interests at heart, even if it has not been seen that they actively have done something, but I don't know, but it's still a bit iffy, or I mean, because you can't get in people's heads. I can understand that. Or I know that the honorable member of the House had said free movement must come with safeguards, and that just like how residency works, if people come in and do foolishness, they could be sent back from where they came. I checked the comment section of him talking about this, about I think it was CBC or Starcom or whatever it was, and I check a comment section and I see so many people saying could. What do you mean could? Well, considering Barbados' population is roughly 281,000 to 285,000 individuals, the percentage of vulnerable to poor individuals are about 25%. So it's about a quarter of the Bajans in Barbados. Quarter of the people living in Barbados are below that line. Roughly 10 to 15 or so percent are affluent and can afford to just pick up and move anywhere. All the rest fall in between. So there are going to be some people that can and some people that can't. But considering all of that, yes, we do have some people that can do that, but there are some people in the struggling bracket that still work or then cash poor and may not necessarily be vulnerable and things, but still can't pick up and just go anywhere. So we need to consider, are we taking all of that into consideration when we talk about these things? I want to tell one about the West Indies Federation, and forgive me if I lean back a bit because my back hurting and thing, and I just want to be comfortable while I talk to one. But if it feel, as we kind of touched on this sort of narrative before when it comes to free movement, it's because we have, but the West Indies Federation was a tiny bit different, and I can tell one how. The West Indies Federation stemmed from 1958 to 1962, and it brought together 10 British Caribbean territories. I know you all know about Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados, but there were also the Leeward Islands, which included Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Anguilla, as well as Montserrat. And then there were the Windward Islands, which was Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as well as Grenada. So British Guyana and British Honduras, which was then called Belize, were also invited, but they didn't really formally join the federation. So to be very honest, when people normally talk about how Barbados, Guyana, Trinidad, and Jamaica were the major players in the federation, that wasn't quite accurate, so you're welcome. When you're talking about the heads of states that were involved, you had on federation level Sir Grant Lee Adams. We know about that. He came from Barbados, and he became the only prime minister of the federation because the federation did not last long. And unfortunately, in case you didn't know, he literally left Barbados politics in order to run all of that, so that may have been a bit of a disappointment, to say the least. There was also the Governor General, and back in that day, it was before independence. So the Governor General was appointed by Britain. He was Lord Hales, who was essentially Britain's overseer. Yeah. So in Jamaica, you had Sir Alexander Bustamante, and you had Norman Manley as well. I'm sure you know those names. However, something interesting to note is that Bustamante was the founder of the Jamaica Labour Party, and he was anti-federation. Norman Manley was the head of the People's National Party. So he was more pro-federation, but pushed on a referendum and thing. But Bustamante's side won in 1961, and then he pulled Jamaica out of the federation. So that was that. In Trinidad and Tobago, you had Dr. Eric Williams, and he was the first premier of Trinidad. And he had the famous line of 1 from 10 leaves not. That. Then from Barbados, before Grantley Adams left for the federal role, you had Hugh Gordon Cummins, who then became the premier from 1958 to 1961. And then, of course, you had from Guyana, Cheddi Jagan. He was more leftist and definitely at odds with Britain. And then later, Forbes Burnham. More conservative, more pro-British, and they weren't inside the Federation, as I told you before, but they were major players in the wider Caribbean independence talk. The whole purpose of the Federation was for that under Britain's colonial umbrella, the Caribbean islands would be like a mini union to prepare for eventual independence as one big nation. However, it failed when Jamaica decided that they weren't doing this anymore after the referendum. They won the referendum in 1961, and that was it. Then Trinidad, with Williams and his 1 from 10 leaves not, left because, to be very honest, they had oil money and they didn't really feel like sharing that with anybody. Without the 2 largest nations, unfortunately, everything fell to pieces in 1962. After that, Jamaica had their independence in 1962. Trinidad had their independence in 1962. Barbados had their independence in 1966. And Guyana also had their independence in 1966. So, yeah. So, it is a bit different from the one movement situation. There is no one person that wants to bring all the islands together and lead or create one government. It is a matter of opening the door for islands to move freely without all the restrictions that we had before, and that we can depend on each other without all of the barriers. So basically, that's what it is. Each island will still have their own nation, will still have their own culture, will still have their own way of being, which is absolutely important. In order to bring home some context and some comparison, did you know that the OECS is kind of doing this already? Many islands in the OECS already allow free movement amongst some other things, which I will highlight to you now. They harmonize economic policies, which includes initiatives like bulk purchasing of medications and different things like that in order to lower the costs. They promote the protection of human and legal rights, and that in turn encourages good governance within the region. The OECS facilitates cooperation and solidarity amongst the member states, assisting with different development efforts. And of course, what I had been saying about free movement, they allow different people to live and work and do their thing across member states with very few restrictions. So this is something that is already in operation. And just for your further information, members of the OECS are Antigua and Barbuda, the Commonwealth of Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We also have associate members, which are the British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. Let's turn our minds to Europe a little bit. And we are not talking about the UK because, there was Brexit and all of that, but there is parity. It means that they see eye to eye. They have a coming together of the minds. Where there is disparity, there is tension. And of course, we're going to touch on something that some people that watch me don't like, and there's me tipping into the past a little bit. But look at Windrush. Look at the migration to the US and to the UK. Even people going up to Canada for labor and construction and anything else. Migration is always something that Caribbean people either were forced to do, or after the horribleness of a few hundred years ago, ended up doing anyway to survive. Remember, I touched on the Treaty of Chaguaramas a little while ago, as well as the single market economy. I just want to reiterate that they laid the groundwork for this movement of peoples to happen. And it's not only the movement of people, but the movement of goods, of services, of industries, things like that. Let's take a legal angle for a minute and look at Marie versus the state of Barbados. So in this, the court held that CARICOM nationals have a free right of movement within the Caribbean community, specifically the right to entry without harassment, judgment, or impediment, based on Article 45 of the revised treaty and the 2007 conference decision. The 2007 conference decision furthers the goal of unrestricted access and movement within the jurisdiction of the member states, subject to public interest considerations. It entitled every community national to a definite entry of 6 months upon arrival in another member state. The rights of establishment and providing services, including tourism, presume the right of movement without unreasonable restrictions. If a community national is refused entry on a legitimate ground, they should be given the opportunity to consult an attorney, counsel, official, or family member. Member states must promptly and in writing provide reasons for refusal and inform the refused national of their right to challenge the decision. This is the legal weight behind this free movement policy that is coming up on October 1st. And we also have the CARICOM Social Security Agreement, which literally provides benefits when people move between states who have implemented the scheme. And you can do further research on that here on Social Security and CARICOM, found at caricom.org. I want to seriously know your thoughts about all of this. Place them in the comment section, flood it. I will try to respond as best I can, but it would be really interesting to hear what you think. If you think it's a good thing, if you think it's a bad thing, if you think it's an in-between thing, if you think we need to be better prepared for it, if you think that we should have been incorporated more into the decisions that are made, let me know your thoughts, okay? You know where to go. Here's where I land, right? The free movement policy is a needed one. Yes, it's a needed one. But it cannot be the fallback plan for governments in general that have not created the opportunity at home and have not incorporated the general public's views or prepared the general public or, things of that nature. Migration should not be a band-aid for wounds that people are really feeling at home. Where is the home drums beat first? And again, I say, yes, we should have free movement. Yes, we should be working together to help each other in crises, to help each other with the economy, to help each other with agriculture, self-dependence and all of that. But we need to properly be prepared for situations such as these. I think, Yes, it's an ongoing process. And more importantly, we need to be listening to our people. Home drums have to beat first. And then it will be a good platform for everything else to stand on, I think. We really need jobs, proper wages for everyone, proper industries, proper opportunities for everyone. And I'm not just talking about people who have the wherewithal to get these jobs and know a person and all that. I'm just talking period. Make things appealing for anyone to want to get in there and do something to build their life and to build their family's life, and in turn build Barbados and keep people at home. We need support for those who are not as mobile. I think we need to support those who are more vulnerable. We need to support those who have fixed income, all of that. We need to be in a place where people who are in these situations feel okay and safe and don't feel as if people have just left them by the wayside while everything else builds around them. They need to have dignity. And I heard something from someone up to recently about housing. I can't remember. If I remember, I will put their name here. I think it is a minister. He was talking at a church and he was talking about dignified housing. So yeah, things like that. Let's think of not only the vulnerable people and those who need support and things like that, but those of us who are also cash poor, those of us who don't have all the wherewithal, those of us who don't know a body, we all need dignified lives. This needs to be a place where people want to stay and live and thrive. One thing I find that tends to be a little bit of a problem is transparency. And this is why I tend to talk about how things need to be said to the public more. The public needs to know more. Yes, every single decision obviously cannot be made by the public. However, they need to be aware of what's going on more, and there needs to be more openness, more transparency, and the powers that be need to be more open to suggestions and criticism, because you're living in a place where people are going to have different thoughts about different things. And I don't think, sometimes I feel as if we're not quite there. We also need more credential recognition across the board, more open-mindedness to credentials across the board, because if you're going to do this thing and incorporate different places, surely you got to open up your mind to what it is that they have and how it works within their boundaries, and how that then can impact or help or grow the place that they go into. So there needs to be more recognition of credentials and social support across borders in general. We need social support. I said that just now in the previous point. Accountability needs to be had. Personally, I don't like, and this ties in with transparency, I don't like, in some situations when I'm listening to the powers that be, and when I say the powers that be, I'm not talking about one person or anything. I'm just talking about the powers that be. There are many of them. Some of them will bark something at you. To me, that closes down the mind and brings up a wall and causes people to complain more. So, but that's just what I think. Then what happens is that if someone complains and has a problem with things like that, for instance, there is no accountability for actually stating things a certain way, doing things, putting things into practice that then probably may not work or haven't worked. No one stands up and say, okay, I put my hands in the air, let's sit down and have a chat about what we can do that's different, or can we have a meeting of the minds? Let's see how we can come together and work on Barbados. Oh goodness, we need to do that. Migration is not the answer to everything. It's a good thing for Caribbean in totality, but it is not the absolute solution. And I don't think anybody thinks that. But it feels as if that's being pushed at the moment, and that is not the absolute solution. Free movement should expand freedom, right? Fine. But it should not limit dignity for one, the people who are trying to find a job, trying to find a different way of life and all that sort of thing. And to the place that will be accepting the people in the place that will be accepting people as well. Siri, when is October 1st?
It's Wednesday, the 1st of October, 2025.
In any case, October 1st coming, whether we like it or not, the freedom movement, by the time I talk on this, gonna be here. Let's hope that it actually works well. Meanwhile, go and watch this video here.